There is one final story you should know from the year 1968. A story about this man, Commander Pete Bucher. He grew up in a world where rules were always black and white. His story is about courage and a shade of gray. When he surrendered his ship to North Korea and gave up far more than name, rank, and serial number, he forced us all to ask this question: how many men should die because of a military blunder?
Do you think of this event as one for shame or one of courage?
I think particularly for the crew, of courage and great service to our country.
And you?
I served it as well as I could, too. I'm not ashamed of anything I did.
The USS Pueblo was designed and commissioned to conduct electronic espionage.
The North Koreans broadcast this confession. It was shocking. The skipper and crew of a U.S. Navy ship held hostage and forced to repudiate their government.
We are criminals who committed hostile acts. We are now most sincerely repentant.
Commander Pete Bucher was 38 years old when he made that confession. Today, he's retired, in poor health, and living with his wife Rose in Southern California. Bucher was the least likely person to star in a national drama. He grew up an orphan from Boys Town, a career Navy guy sent on what the government assured him was a sleepy assignment. Command of the USS Pueblo, a creaky so-called spy ship eavesdropping on communist North Korea.
Had you rehearsed what you would do if the ship were ever taken?
No, it was not a possibility. The whole mission had been judged to be non-threatening and without danger. We were so highly classified, nobody in the Navy knew who we were. When our message for help went out, Com 7th Fleet, whose area we were in, said, well, who the hell's the Pueblo?
That call for help went out on January 23rd, when 4 Korean gunboats suddenly attacked the ship and her crewmen, including Stu Russell.
The second they opened fire on us, the whole world changed completely and forever for us. I was kind of wondering why my heart just didn't blow up. I've never been so terrified in my life.
Bucher ordered the crew to destroy secret documents and radioed for help. The Navy had promised fighter jets if ever there was trouble, but help never came.
Why didn't you fire back?
Because we couldn't. There was nothing to fire back with. They gave us a .50 caliber machine gun, but I had nobody trained to use it. They wouldn't give me training time.
But there are a lot of people who think that you should have done anything you could, even taken the fire, gone down.
Well, if there had been a war on, I'm sure we would have died. I would have done that. But there's no war there, and I was told specifically when I left port there by Admiral Johnson, he said, now look, Bucher, he says, you're not a damn cowboy out there. I don't want you starting World War III. I said, Admiral, I ain't starting your war for you.
Already wounded himself, Bucher saw one of his men go down. He ordered the doctor to give the injured sailor more morphine.
He said if I give him any more morphine, it would, he couldn't, he probably wouldn't make it. And so I told him, well, go ahead, because he was dying. And so we at least took him out of his misery there.
Bucher surrendered. It was unthinkable in John Wayne America, where we were still living the Hollywood myth of a highly prepared, infallible military. The Pueblo was the first Navy ship to surrender during peacetime in 150 years, and an ill-equipped, unprepared captain and his 82 men were taken hostage.
How soon after they took you did the torture begin?
Immediately. It was mostly kicking, and then some gun butts, of course, rifle butts that were swung at people. I was rendered unconscious about 3 times in the first day or day and a half.
Did you think they were going to kill you?
Well, the guy pulled out a revolver, and he put it to my head, and the only thing I could think of saying was, I love you, Rose, my wife. And then that pistol clicks down on an empty chamber, and it's like, God, it's like, it just echoes for a long time.
The North Koreans demanded public confessions and apologies. The captain says he had to choose, embarrass his country or lose the lives of his 82 men.
At one point they showed you a South Korean captive, right?
They said it was a South Korean, and he was badly beat up, His bone was breaking through his skin. He had apparently bit through his lip, and his eye was put out. They said, well, this is what they do to spies. And I was unprepared for that kind of sight. And they said, well, you either sign this thing or we start with your youngest guy and we start killing him until you sign it. And I said, well, to hell with it. I'll just sign it.
All your life, you had been trained for the moment at which you would give name, rank, serial number, and nothing else. Yeah. But did you say to yourself at that moment, I'm letting myself down?
Yeah, absolutely.
The men are provided with various...
As the months passed, the Koreans sent out propaganda films in which the men were forced to extol their humane treatment. But the crew managed to sneak their own message into some of the photos, a hand gesture for their captors that no American would misread.
One of the other Korean officers saw him. What's that mean? And the guy had enough head work to say, well, that's a Hawaiian good luck sign. And the guy says, Hawaiian good luck sign? Yeah, good luck.
The Koreans discovered the real meaning and took bloody revenge. Pete Bucher heard the screams of his crewmen, but there was nothing he could do. And he worried about something else. As a naval officer, he did know some secrets about Navy ships and submarines. He feared, under torture, he might yield.
And so I seriously considered suicide, and I tried to do that by drowning myself.
Drowning?
Well, everybody had a slop bucket where you could urinate. I talked myself into the fact that I ought to drown myself because otherwise I might somewhere or other give up information that I thought was very vital to this country. And I tried to do that, but I couldn't do it.
Did you feel responsible for your crew members?
Yes, that's my job. I was their skipper. That's my job.
What did you feel your responsibility was?
To do everything I could to see that they were properly taken care of till we got out of there.
He, I think, alone pulled everybody through it. He was a giant, and we'd follow him anywhere.
Finally, after 11 months of captivity and negotiation, America's first famous set of hostages was ready to come home. Exhausted, beaten, starved, they walked one by one toward freedom, with their commander, Pete Bucher, leading the way.
And once I got across that bridge, and here's this Army colonel over there and give me a cup of coffee and a donut, boy, I knew we were out of that damn place. I remember this kid reading Edgar Allan Poe's Buried Alive thing, and I remember the description of what that guy, poor bastard, went through, and I thought, gee, this was just like getting out of a grave that nobody knew you were alive in.
But not long after he was released, the nightmare started again for Bucher, this time because of his own Navy. It began an investigation into the ship's capture and recommended Bucher be court-martialed. The Pentagon eventually declined to prosecute, but Bucher's ordeal as a Pueblo prisoner became a life sentence.
You're sitting alone in a cell, and your mind is telling you this is going to get worse before it gets better. I had the responsibility for that crew. They were my men and my responsibility.
It would be 1990 before Bucher was finally given the vindication he sought for his men. He convinced the Navy to honor the Pueblo men with prisoner of war medals.
Why was that so important to all of you?
The crew needed somebody to tell them officially in Washington that they'd done a good job.
The men of the Pueblo could finally put 1968 to rest. The nation had learned that Hollywood courage was not the only kind, that ordinary men facing ambiguous choices could also be brave. And so the sailors who survived terror and torture cheered each other and then cheered loudest for Pete Bucher. Bucher's crew is celebrating their 30th anniversary of freedom this month. Ask any one of them and they'll tell you they owe Bucher their lives and all the things many of us too often take for granted. Children, grandchildren, the chance to hold a 4th of July family reunion. 30 years ago, Bucher made possible one more thing for his crew. He got them home alive, just in time for the final amazing event of 1968.
We
have liftoff. Liftoff at 7:51 a.m.
In the very last week of December, Apollo 8 flew the most daring and dangerous space mission yet. This was the first manned flight to go around the moon, out of sight, out of contact. From across that vast distance, the astronauts sent a message of hope to the watching Pueblo survivors, welcoming them home. And then they read a simple message for the rest of the world that was watching too.
God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void. And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. What a wonderful world.
The darkness of 1968 was receding at last. The courage of Apollo turned us toward light and the promise of a more merciful future.
And from the crew of Apollo 8, we close with good night, good luck, a Merry Christmas, and God bless all of you on the good earth.